Good.
Thank you. Brown Dowdle, everyone. So first of all, I'd like to thank each one of you guys for coming. You guys could be at Fremont, but instead you chose to hang out here with me, and for that I love you. I won't remember your name, but I love you. So again, it's talking about adding more lighting excitement to your lights. Because when you think back years ago, what did DJs bring out? Tons of spin and puke lights, and you crammed them all in a T-stand. I'm Hispanic, so I can cram like tons of lights into one stand. And then 4 of those stands and like lighting and everything else into a 1995 Honda Civic. But that's besides the point. Things have changed. Now you're seeing DJs bring out more and more and more. And the question is where do you go to your purchase as far as, which direction you want to go, and how much is too much? When are you going from over the top to overkill? And when are you actually selling to your clients or selling to other DJs? And I say that real boldly because I'm seeing too much of that. But I want to talk a little bit on that. And also the lighting designing that we do, because we do school dances, because we're trying to find the medium between something that's fun, that's exciting, but still a professional production. We're trying to find the leeway in between of what I call the #1 struggle that DJs go through when it comes to lighting. So let's go over these amazing PowerPoint slides. Just kidding. We're going to skip the part about me because you guys drank enough of my Kool-Aid, and there's only so much in that a punch bowl you can fit in. So the toughest thing about lighting design for mobile DJs, and that's contradictions. Now the #1 contradiction that I've seen is you don't want to be cheap, but you don't want to go broke trying to design your light show. And now when you're looking at lighting, a single light can cost you, people say, oh, that light costs $1,000. Meanwhile, the guys doing concerts are like, yeah, I'll pick up 4 of those moving heads, $20,000 each, not a problem. So it's one of those contradictions. Where are you being, where can you be cheap as far as saving money, but not being cheap as far as the equipment that you bring out or the overall show that you bring out? The second toughest thing about lighting design for mobile DJs is cord management. And this is the truth. I mean, if you go to a concert, well, we're different. We're DJs. We're like, oh yeah, there's Steven Tyler right there, but check that out. It's a little bit different up there. No one is actually looking at the trussing for the most part. When you're doing a wedding, anybody here still do like setups on T-stands and all that? And there's nothing wrong with it because you can do some really cool setups on T-stands. I'm beginning to like T-stands again after doing prom after prom after prom. But the tough thing about a T-stand versus trussing is where do you pack all those cables? So wire management is something that's really important because if you don't have a pretty looking setup, for your cords, you're going to wind up on, the internet being blasted out because it was unprofessional. You could have been the most professional person ever, but cord management is key. So first of all, how does lighting design compare? Things have changed a lot in the last few years. Just let's say from 2009 for now. And this is something that I've noticed especially with 4 Schools Only. Even though, I own Master School Dances, that's not the name of the school dance company. It's 4 Schools Only. Let's look, for example, this was one of my favorite dances back in 2009. This is Club 09. We brought out the 69 boys who joined us here. By the way, they will be, after this, the exhibit hall. Go to ADJ's booth. They're going to be out there doing a meet and greet. But they came in, they did a performance. We blew the doors out of this prom. I mean, literally blew the doors. They demolished the building the next day. It was doomed to be destroyed. But I mean, the lighting was awesome, right? And then if we go back to we go forward to 2012, we have a setup like this one here. And for the most part, the camera settings were the same. So it's not that, oh, well, you got a better camera. No, camera settings were the same. It was still the same type of lens and all that. But what is the difference? Well, this show was actually bigger. This has a 30 by 30 truss formation. We had 8 scanners, 2 barrel scanners. We had effects lights. We had 12 floods going all the way around. But if you look here, you have one 30-foot truss span, 4 movers, 6 floodlights, 3 effects lights, strobes, and lasers. What happened is when we actually did inventory, we're making our shows smaller, but they're looking bigger. Now, who here does not want to have bigger looking shows and bring out half of the stuff that you used to bring out? I mean, that's something that everybody wants to do in the long run, especially when you're doing schools. Any multi-ops here? Multi-ops, your DJs will never take care of equipment as well as you can. I swear, if I had a quarter for every time I got a text message that said, "Hey, Arnoldo, did you know that this light bounces down the stairs?" Thanks a lot. Now, the same thing happens for weddings. And I want to let you know, even though I do primarily schools, I want to talk about weddings too. This was actually a wedding for a couple of really good friends of mine. They're not married. That's the father and daughter. Florida isn't that bad. But again, they just wanted, they wanted the area to be filled with color. They didn't want the house lights on. Our primary clients don't want the house lights on because house lights are yellow and ugly, not pretty, unlike the other lights. But we brought out some uplights. We brought out 4 individual park cans, the color-chasing park cans and whatnot. But then we have another wedding here, similar light show. The big difference is, in this one here, we brought 4 park cans and 8 uplights, right? And here we only brought 2 par cans. We aimed them at the ceiling. And this also prevents something that's called hot spotting. This is something that photographers absolutely hate, and I'll cover that in just a second. But why did I bring these 4 photos up? Because the difference between photo A and photo B is lighting placement. It's mature LED technology. Technology will never be mature in the sense that, we've reached all that we can reach. But LEDs are now getting to a point where people are saying, okay, that's a little bit too bright. And that's a good thing. You can use that to your advantage. And of course, we cheated with filters. What I'm trying to say is that we are in Vegas and cheating is okay as long as it's with a filter. Now, the filters are called they're the LSFs, which we'll go over that in just a moment as well. Lighting placement is honestly the most important thing, and the thing that we really try to push towards our DJs. How often does I don't know if you guys do it or not, think about it to yourselves. Do you go to check out the venue? Can you walk into a venue and immediately say, okay, I know exactly where the lights are going to be? We're not all Ben Stowe. We can't just sit there, look at a room like, I know where the lights are going to go. Sometimes you got to go in there, kind of measure and bounce out lights. The first thing of lighting placement that I like to talk about is bouncing lighting. And this prevents what I call hot spotting. For example, if you have, let's say, 4 or 5 par cans, right? LED par 64s, and you aim them right over here, these guys are going to look like the surface of the sun. You guys may not be hit that far back at all. And you guys, well, forget y'all, okay? Sorry, you don't get covered in lights. So that's a little bit tough. But let's say that this room had, the white ceilings, or the lights could reflect off. I could take those par cans, bounce them off the ceilings, and now it's hitting the entire area evenly with lights. Now, one of the really cool things about that we have discovered after talking to photographers is the average photographer hates it when you have a DJ that puts a really bright light here, a really bright light here, and everything else is completely dark. To jump on the photography jargon, or if you ever look, for example, at a photo of uplighting, who here does uplighting? Who here has a photo of their uplighting and has a big white spot in the middle and to color everything else around? The reason you get that is basically the camera can only see one shade of darkness. We're going to call the f-stop, right? That's the technical name. If you have the uplight so you can actually see everything else around, that's going to be white because that's overexposed. If you have the uplight where everything looks nice, everything is going to be really dark. This is why you see photographers bringing out external lighting so the room is even with color when you have, or even with light, when you have all the lighting placed on the dance floor. If not, if they compensate so the dance floor isn't blown out, the rest of the room is going to be pitch black. So when you're bouncing the lights off the ceiling, it's going to make their job easier. They are going to take notice, and they're going to love you for it. Second thing about lighting placement is creating 2 zones. This is mostly for weddings, corporate events. Schools, the whole thing should be a party zone. But when I mean 2 zones is we try to get our clients to look into 2 goals for lighting. One is your ambient zone, where people are going to sit, the uplighting, something that's really pretty that carries the overall theme, and then the party zone. I don't want, our lights flashing around where the tables are or moving around, because I want people to know that where all the light and excitement is, that's the dance floor. That's where you come out. If the dance floor has the same light show as the very back of the room or the sides where people are sitting, why should they come out to the dance floor? They can just stay in their chair and do the chair scoot and boogie on it. And also, lights don't need to be near the DJ. We have done this more than ever before. Now, let's face it, a few years ago, wireless technology was absolutely horrible for DJs. It was scary. You would all of a sudden see your lights going. All of a sudden, the lights are like, nope, forget you. We're just going to do whatever we want. We have proudly run our entire homecoming and prom last 2 seasons completely wireless. And I don't mean just one wireless pack and a bunch of receivers. I mean the wireless pack, a bunch of receivers. We had our wireless modem because I needed to have Wi-Fi access so I can use the remote for our lighting. We had some other radio system the hotel had, plus the hotel Wi-Fi, all on similar frequencies. And that worked perfect. We had no issues with the wireless dropout. It was the greatest thing ever. So now we're able to start selling wedding packages. We did, actually, I just booked a wedding before I came here, and we did the big consult, and she's like, I just want it to not look like the hotel. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe let's not look at uplighting, because the hotel already has uplighting, and it looks the same as it does in every one of their photos. So we talked about just putting, 4 individual trees, all nice and pretty and draped, and it's going to be wirelessly controlled, so the entire room is going to change colors. This was something we couldn't do before, and it's a big ballroom. It's about the size of this. And I don't know if you guys ever tried hiring DMX cabling, go all the way down. It's not a lot of fun. Once you go wireless, and please make sure you do your research on it, but once you go wireless, you can do some really cool stuff with lighting, and you can even use less lights. Because if I have everything wired and I'm doing it here, I have to have extra lights there, gotta have extra lights for there, whereas I can just break this over original show and break it into 4 corners. Mature LED technology, like I said, lights are getting obnoxiously bright. And you want to buy, obviously, what's best out there, but there is a point where I think it's too good, or it might be overkill for my needs. For example, once you have a light that's too bright, and you know that it already fills up a gym. Let's say we have a light show here, and the gym is plenty. This is a gymnasium at school. The students are dancing, and it's really bright. It's so bright that you got to go in there. I use CompuShow and Medicon, so I take the Medicon fader and I fade them down a little bit. And I have to do that every time. Why would I buy something that's even brighter? What's the point of that? When I can take that money and save it or invest it towards a different lighting route that we're going to want to go. Once you have bright or LED floods, and I always pick on the LED floods, once you have them, they're bright enough, why are DJs buying more LED floods? And they're selling them before they even get a chance to actually make the money out of them. Does anybody here know how much their lights actually make them per event? Does anybody here keep track of that? It's all right. We didn't do that till like this past year. And then when we talked to Bill Cronheim and Ben Stowe, they're like, you really should be doing that. I mean, think about it. If you buy, let's say, for example, buy a light, and you have no idea how many times, you know how many times you took it out, but you don't know how much that light made you after you paid for it. And then you sell it, and then you buy another light. Did you make a profit out of that light, or at least a profit that was worthwhile? And then the other thing is that when you're looking at mature LED technology, consider output and dispersion to reduce quantity needed. You have power cans that are out there in 25-degree beams, right? But they have a long throw. Then you have some of the new floodlights that are strip lights. They have a short throw, but they're super wide, 120 degrees or something ridiculous like that. Where are you wanting to hit when you do your lighting design? Are you wanting a far throw? Are you wanting a wide throw? And how can you achieve that? And how can you cheat with that too? And I'll cover that in a moment. And then, of course, equilibrium price. Again, please don't go cheap. Please don't go, I'm just going to say it, don't go importing a light from China and expect the same quality that you're going to get from a U.S. retailer that's going to take care of you. I had a problem with one of my lights. I called my retailer. They called American DJ, and I got the new light, or the parts that I needed, and everything taken care of within a couple of days. You know, if that was somebody directly from China, they don't care who I am. I'm not a distributor. I'm not a big name. They're just like, haha, buy another one. So want to make sure that you're getting a good equilibrium price, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you're not spending too much in a light where you're going broke. Nobody here wants to go broke. Everybody here loves new toys. And the reason I know is because half the people that came and asked me why there's a UFO sitting in front of me. Everybody loves new toys. But you want to make sure that you have an equilibrium price where you're not spending too much, but you're not going too cheap. That makes sense, right? Say yes. Good. Half of you lie to me. No. Next is cheating with filters. And we're going to talk about that in a second, but I want you to keep that in your mind. Cheating with filters, because a $99 investment allowed me to basically double the output of my power cans. It was the greatest thing ever. But before we talk about that, and before we talk about the client, I want to pick on the videographer and the photographer. Essentially, I believe these are the people that can refer us more than anybody else. Even more before the venue, more before wedding, well, depending on the wedding coordinator, because once you get a wedding coordinator that works for the DJ, they're usually set in their ways. But how do you sway the videographer and photographer to refer you? I could probably say I have more of them referring us than any other type of vendor, and that's because we cater to their pet peeves. Again, hotspot is number one. If you're a photographer, you're taking a photo of the bride and groom, and there's a big bright light on them, but the rest of the room doesn't have some sort of even wash, now they're going to have to do either individual work of having to set up extra flash, they call them off-camera flashes, or they're going to have to worry about fixing it in photo or Lightroom. And if you want to know how much fun Lightroom is, come see my seminar tomorrow. Next one is tacky colors. As you know, colors have a huge color psychology on people. You know, reds can make people all sorts of crazy. Reds with blues kind of calm them down a little bit. Reds and yellows, and it's pandemonium. You know, woohoo, pants off, shades on our head type of thing. But green, I have been to way too many weddings, or I've seen too many weddings where somebody's projecting green on the bride and groom. Everybody here is aware that green is a terrible color to project on the bride and groom, right? It's horrible. It makes them look sickly. But there's people out there that are doing it. Now, I don't expect everybody to go out there and run and get a DMX console, but if you're running your lights on standalone, at some point, there's going to be, my lights may be flashing from color to color during the first dance, whatever, it doesn't matter. If it flashes even green remotely, just stop it. Just write these two words down, stop it, because photographers hate that because green is just a tacky color to project on people. It looks pretty on uplighting, it can be okay while people are dancing, but not during the important dances. Flickering. This is mostly for older LED lights, but as you know, and again, you'll talk to Ben Stowe about this, ask him about pulse width modulation. Basically, LEDs are never solid on. They actually flicker, and if you have an older light and you have the camera at just the right setting, you're going to get a nasty flicker. And you're going to get some nasty letters from the videographer saying, what the heck did you do to my videos? So please make sure that, test your lights, talk to the photographer and videographer, and if it flickers, just dim them down a little bit or turn them all the way on. And that way you won't be on the same frequency path as the camera, shutter speed. Last but not least, laser dots. I love the laser stars. They're pretty. And they belong on the ceiling, not on the bride and groom. So I need you guys to do me a favor. Everybody stand up. Right hand up. And repeat after me. I will not put laser dots on the bride and groom, or I will get called a tool online. You may sit. Thank you. I've always just wanted to do that right then and there. Let me tell you right now, if you go up to a photographer and you tell them, I do not put laser dots on the bride and groom, they're going to love you right away. Now, you may say, but Arnoldo, these laser machines project dots everywhere and it's hard to control. It's called duct tape, folks. Just duct tape those areas so it doesn't hit the bride and groom. Now let's talk about what the client truly wants. But before I get to that, I want to talk about why are we selling to other DJs and not clients. I'm not saying everybody here, but I've just noticed quite a bit online. People get their feelings hurt by what a DJ says, and it's like it's going to affect their paycheck or something. I mean, technically, you guys do affect my paycheck, but not when it comes to lighting or anything like that. I want to know what my client cares. So, I mean, as far as that goes, things that clients say that, or the DJ say the clients don't, here's the fun part. This light is lighter. This LED is better than this LED. This light is brighter. This light is used in Pro Tours, and this light has better gobos. Let's take it one by one. This one's real quick. This light is lighter. There better be a good excuse. Your clients don't care how light a light is. They just care that you were able to set it up. I don't care if the lights are getting too light. I mean, come on, this is a heavy light fixture. I can pick it up right then and there. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but speakers are getting really, really light, and people still complain about them. Your average light is going to be a little bit heavy. You have parkings that are lights. Please do not let how light a light is, well, that's a weird tongue twister, be a deciding factor. If it looks good and it meets your goals, get it. This light is better than this LED, or this light is brighter. Again, if your lights are perfect and they give you the return of investment that you are earning for or yearning for, then what is upgrading going to do? Now, this is one of my favorite photos because this is a venue where uplighting usually doesn't look that good because you can't do wash lighting because there's this horrible wooden truss everywhere and there's not a lot of outlets. There's only like 8 outlets in the entire place. But the bride and the venue, they love it. Now, you know the best part about this setup? These are not LEDs. These are lights we've had forever. We've had, the par 36 cans. We got rid of the incandescent bulbs. We got the halogens. But I mean, I can have my clients get LED bulbs. In this case, they didn't have the budget for it. So instead of saying, well, sorry, you can't get LEDs, I tell them, okay, well, we've got these. They're more economical, but they don't change color, and they have a few drawbacks. But the most part is, it looked good. And most DJs that I showed this to say, oh, that's a really nice LED uplight. No, it's not. It's halogen. Why am I saying this? Because if you have an LED uplight and if it works for you, if something bigger and better comes along, you got to give yourself criteria. Are you going to buy it, or are you going to stick with that brand that you have that you know works? Because you want to take that money and buy, or if you want to go into a different direction, you can't keep doing that if all you're worried about is uplighting and floods. This light is used in Pro Tours. You have got to be kidding me. I am doing schools. I don't have a school coming up to me and be like, excuse me, Arnoldo, I did notice that this light was not used in the Aerosmith concert. I would like my money back. They don't care. They just want their beams and lasers and colors and all that. And you know what? Moving heads used to be expensive. Moving heads are getting dirt cheap now. And not only that, but moving heads are also getting to the point they don't require tons of power. With, the 2R series bulbs and the 5R and, the 15R, if you feel the need to stand underneath the surface of the sun, moving heads are getting affordable, and that you are getting some pro features on them. But for the most part, your client isn't going to care. Let's look at, for example, let's say you have 5 moving lights, or 4 moving heads. Let's say 4, 5, whatever. But for that same money, you could buy 10 moving heads that have maybe a couple less features. Maybe the colors aren't, they don't have as many colors, or there's different gobos on them. Is your client going to notice if one of those 4 go out or one of those 10 go out? Because if one of those 4 moving heads go out, that's 25% of your show. One of those 10 go out, that's a different story. So when we started designing our light shows for our schools, we decided, you know what, for moving heads, we wanted to go moving heads because we're doing the trussing over the crowd. But my schools aren't going like, oh, look at that gobo, it's a star. Oh, I see the prism. They're not doing that. They just want big, thick beams. And we're in Florida. You can use haze everywhere, even in the bathrooms. Just want to set up a haze machine in the bathroom? Cool. But because of that, we wanted nice, thick beams. So, like, for example, I went with the InnoScans. There's no gobo. It's just a big, bright LED pattern. And it was great for what we needed. And for the price of that, instead of buying 4 traditional moving heads, we were able to get a lot more of those lights. And our clients love it. This light has better gobos. And the quote says, that is one great looking gobo. I'm glad this DJ chose these moving heads. Said no one ever. In all honesty, and let's be realistic, if you're using DMX, that's a whole different story. But if you're doing where, it's just either standalone or you have a controller and it's moving really fast, are gobos actually going to matter as much versus the overall lighting design? Are you putting more attention of what this gobo looks like versus what the entire event looks like? The exception is, kudos to Bob Carpenter, a setup like here. And this didn't happen by accident. Yeah, Bob could have set up a bunch of Source 4s and everything, but instead he used his moving heads and he had the Prism gobos and everything. So he actually did take that because that was part of his business plan. Bob's business plan is not, let's plug in a bunch of lights, let them run wirelessly, or let them run, on a controller on standalone. If it was, he would have chosen a different light and got it a bigger bang for the buck. Next, I want to talk about over-the-top versus overkill. And it's completely up to your client and their vision. What one client may think that's over-the-top, the other client's going to be like, my God, that's hideous. I've had some setups that look absolutely beautiful. And every DJ is like, oh, that's amazing. Oh, my gosh. Not in that voice, of course. And then I have clients that are like, I love it. But then we get the one client's like, I don't like it. So every client has a little bit of a different idea. What we think is over top and overkill is not what your clients care. And since our clients kind of fund our business, what they think is important. So we want to make sure that when we're designing a package for our clients, that we want to make sure that it's over the top for them. And I mean over the top in a good way, meaning that it's going to exceed their expectations. As a professional, you need to guide them into something that looks good. How many here believe the customer is always right?
Not always.
Yeah, not always. Oh my God, I can't believe he's saying that. I mean, you guys know this may be a surprise, but I drink the Apple Kool-Aid. I think Apple is the greatest company ever in terms of marketing, even if Steve Jobs did a bunch of evil things in his life. When they were designing the iPad, because those of you who don't know, the iPad was being designed before the iPhone. They talked about the fact that there is no keyboard. There's no physical keyboard on this. And they asked Steve Jobs, what is your average consumer going to say, when they see that there's no physical keyboard? Do you guys know what Steve Jobs said? They're going to learn to like it. And unfortunately, that's the way you have to approach some of these things. Sometimes your client doesn't know what they want. If I sold my clients specifically what they came and asked us for, 4 schools only would have never been born, and we'd be $500 DJs bringing out 2 non-moving lights with the cables hanging and all that. Sometimes you have to show the client. Like the one I said that wanted the hotel to not look like the hotel ballroom, we showed her things that she hasn't even heard of. She's never heard of color lasers doing her name, an actual full color. She's never heard of wireless uplighting or wireless downlighting, and she's certainly never seen really cool, as far as the big, thick moving beams. She's never heard any of that, and she didn't think of that. She's like, well, I have like a $700 budget. I'm like, oh, sorry. But when she saw all of this, she realized, okay, I have to get this. I've never seen this before. And, we're talking $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, and all of a sudden, she's booking for all of this, but she didn't know she wanted it. So again, your clients don't always know what they want. Also, don't lose the standard of your company, meaning 2 things on that. First, I'm going to get some water. Which, by the way, I got that from the airport. TSA has a fit about me bringing shampoo on board, but they allow that water to be sold. So when we're designing the lights again, and we're talking with our clients and we come up with something, we want to make sure that they don't choose something that's too cheap and looks terrible. For example, uplighting. How many of you sell uplighting by the package versus by the parcan? How many of you sell it by the venue? Okay, consider selling this by the venue. Think about it. Let's say you do it by the can. And I can't hate on this because we used to do this too, and then Ben showed me the light. No pun intended. If you sell it by, let's say here we need, let's say a room like this, right? And it looks good with 20 or 30 cans. And you're selling it by the can, and you're like, I recommend you get 20 or 30 rooms, going to look great. And the bride's like, nah, I'm going to get 8. Now, I'm pretty good at squeezing light output, but 8 park amps may not cut it in here. Someone's going to walk in, and it could be the venue, could be a guest, like, man, this lighting design is terrible. It looks empty. So basically, you put your company's reputation at harm because you were selling it by the can. So we sell it by the venue. If you can't get it by the venue, you don't get uplighting, or you go by somebody else, and I wash my hands of that. But think about that on that. Also, when I mean don't lose the sight of what your company standard is, if you do big light shows, and if you don't know 4 schools only, we pride ourselves on big, fun, exciting light shows, right? But sometimes at a wedding, they're not going to ask for 100 feet of trussing. They're not going to ask for my boy Thrill the Player and the 69 Boys crew to come up and go, come on, fuck, let's roll. Let me see that Tootsie Roll in the middle of the first dance. Because if they did, I would love them forever. We need to work on that. We need to do the Tootsie Roll for somebody's first dance. I'm in Florida, so, we do some crazy stuff in there. But just because we're bringing out a T-stand doesn't mean that it doesn't have to have our company's, or it has to lose sight from what our company does. I want somebody to walk into a room, see the light set up, be like, that's Arnoldo with A Premier Entertainment. And that's what you have to guide to yourself. Whatever you bring out, if it's not the best that your company can do, not in terms of amount of equipment, but I mean in the presentation, you don't do it. If you think that 8 uplights are not going to work in this room and that's not going to be what your company does, you don't sell 8 uplights in this room. You sell by the venue once, and if they don't want it, that's too bad. And I know that sounds horrible, but you know. So over the top and overkill. I'm going to breeze through this one. And these are all based on real life examples because YouTube made my life a lot easier. First of all, over the top. I had a client that wanted room floods, textured gobos, static uplighting, right? But then they showed me some setups they didn't like. I asked them, show me things you like and things that you don't like. And they showed me a venue that had color-changing floods and uplighting. Now, there's nothing wrong with having color-changing uplighting and color-changing floods. Those of you that do color-changing uplighting know it's the most incredible thing ever. If you want to do something really cool, start doing uplighting with moving heads, if you have enough of those moving heads laying around. And then imagine bride and groom come in, all of a sudden you see all the uplighting just boom, tilt over to the front where they're coming in. I'm telling you, it's going to be the coolest thing ever, right? And eventually it's going to be more commonly seen, I'm sure of it. But when they're not synced, when you just have them running in random colors, it's going to look weird. It's going to look a little bit too crazy. That's overkill. Carefully timed shows to a slow song, with dramatic fades and sweeps across the light. Who here uses DMX? Y'all gonna make me lose my mind. All right, DMX, greatest thing ever, right? And you can actually upsell that. If a bride, goes for a standard show and she's like, I would like a custom first dance slideshow, yeah, you're gonna pay for that. Because our lighting designers and my time is not free. So we show them some of the really fun stuff that we can do where the bride and groom come out, there's a spotlight fall and they walk in the middle. We have clouds across the bottom. The whole hotel room fades down and then we just have their colors flooded around the entire area, a true white light on them. We just sell them all sorts of crazy things and ideas and find out what they like and what they don't like. However, if you have strobes during a slow song, and yes, this happens all the time. If not, go on YouTube. And if you're one of those DJs using a strobes during a slow song, remember where I asked you to write stop it? Highlight that. Please don't use strobes during a slow song. Please don't use Justin Bieber as a slow song either. I'm telling you, no. So again, continuing on. For example, 4 well-placed LED floods bouncing off the ceiling. And again, I do this all the time. This is my favorite because a lot of the venues in Florida, we don't have black ceilings. We have like white or the cream ceilings like that. And we just bounce them off and that way we get a nice flood of coverage like in the first photo that I showed earlier. And that looks great. It's an easy setup that we charge a couple $100 for. It takes us like 5 minutes to set up, right? However, if you have 20 LED floods for a 30-person event, I'm not making this up. 20 LED floods for a 30-person event. This means that we could do like the centerpiece giveaway game and everyone could leave with an LED light. Now, wouldn't that be a heck of a wedding, right? It's like, dude, I got this light. I don't know what to do with it, but check it out. It's bright. So sometimes it is a little bit overkill. Why? Because maybe they could have bounced the lights off. Instead, they needed full room coverage. They never thought about bouncing lights off the ceiling. Again, over the top is something the client didn't expect. A remote control system for a small party with 2 to 4 LED floods. Again, I love DMX. I think DMX should be used in everything, including making your coffee. See what I did there? And not every client can afford for me to bring out a lighting tech and all that. So I had a Sweet 16, and she wanted some lighting, but she had a very limited budget, and I told her, look, you've got a couple of choices. We can have this show here, which is small. It's a really nice, effective light show, and it's got a lighting tech. Or I have these lights that are used with my UC3 controller. If you don't use UC3, it's a wireless remote controller. It's great. It's not line of sight either. You can keep it in your pocket. I'm like, I can do that. It's just a lot. It's a lot easier because I don't have to pay a light technician to come out. We can put that money towards more lighting. And she's like, yeah, I want to go for it. So I sell that all the time. Sometimes you don't have to have DMX to create a great light show.